Hello, everyone. This is Dave Schiller. I'm the founder of Aegis Wealth Partners. Today, we're going to discuss what happens when families and students are faced with looming college decisions. This can be a really exciting time for the student, selecting schools, thinking about all the great experiences that they're going to have in college, and becoming independent. But the hard part, and sometimes terrifying part of all this, is how the hell are we going to pay for this? To give you a general idea on what the timeline is going to look like, most of the colleges are going to issue the fall semester bills around July 1st. They'll be due around August 1st, give or take a couple weeks. For the spring semester, those invoices are going to come in mid-November and be due mid-December. Most educational loan applications can be completed and issued in about 1 to 3 days. And we do advise having those loans in place by July 1st, just so you're not scrambling as soon as those invoices come in. And finally, most college monthly payment plans, those are going to start June 1st, right after the student graduates from high school. So we'll discuss those college monthly plans a little bit later. So let's discuss how we can reduce the amount that we borrow. What is essentially a down payment or pre-qualification on tuition? And when should we use which particular resources? So the first one that you're going to want to look at is if the student has any savings or investments, usually you're going to want to use those first, because when it comes to colleges calculating how much a family can afford, student savings and investments, those are going to be counted at a much higher percentage than parent assets. Next, you're going to look at different college saving plans, and then you get a slew of different accounts like the UGMA, UTMA, any savings in the student name, 529s, which are very common. Sometimes you'll see covered out education savings accounts, other types of college savings plans. Then any other types of funds earmarked for college, um, any gifts from grandparents or someone outside of the household. Could be graduation, could just be something that the grandparent has been saving up. They wanted to help their grandkids. So how is that going to get dispersed? This is something that you're going to really want to pay attention to, because is that money going to go to the student or is it going to go to the school? And there's a lot of implications here. There's implications for the student and whether they have to claim that as income, whether the grandparent is facing gift taxes. All those types of things play into gifts from grandparents. So you're going to want to make sure you do that right. Private scholarships, any student income. We'll get into tax credits a little bit later, and then finally we'll get into student loans. All right, so continuing on with how are we going to reduce the amount that we borrow? A lot of schools will have a monthly payment plan, and schools will utilize a third-party institution to transact those payments. Usually it's going to be a 10-month repayment schedule, and many of those payments are actually going to start in the spring months leading up to the following school year. These are actually a really great way to reduce the amount that you borrow, because the enrollment fees are nominal. Typically, you're going to see $60 to $75. There's usually not any interest on it. But the key point here is that you don't have to pay for the entire amount. You can do a partial amount. So if you have extra cash flow, you can use that, and that's going to help on the amount that's borrowed, and that's going to make a big impact if the student does have student loans when they graduate. Most of these payment plans, again, are going to start June 1st, as we mentioned before. So what are the practical implications of using a monthly payment plan? If you put $100 a month towards college for 10 months, that's going to be approximately $5,000 less that you or your student are going to have to borrow. Let's move on to a couple of tax credits. The first one being the American Opportunity Tax Credit, or AOTC. The maximum tax credit is $2,500 a year per eligible student. This is subject to a phase out, and for 2022, the phase out is $80,000 for a single person getting the full tax credit. The phase out begins between $80,000 and $90,000. A single person earning more than $90,000 is not eligible for this tax credit. For married filed jointly, it's going to double. So full credit under $160,000, no credit above $180,000. Keep in mind that if you are married but you file separately, you cannot claim any of these education credits. And this is a refundable tax credit. So that means if you have zero tax tax liability, but you have $2,500 in this tax credit, you actually get a refund. And then for this particular tax credit, this is only good for the first 4 calendar years of undergraduate studies. No graduate studies can be used for this. Some more details on the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Qualified education expenses include tuition, fees that are specific to courses related to the student's major, books, classroom supplies, and equipment. What you cannot use this tax credit for are things like room and board, transportation, student health fees. What are your options if your AGI is over $180,000? Well, the student might be able to recapture some of the AOTC if they have earned income, file a tax return, and claim themselves as an exemption. And if the family has business income, they might want to consider putting the student on payroll so that they reduce their income tax liability, and then they can recapture AOTC that way. Also, for self-employed families, they might want to look into a tuition repayment plan. And as a side note, this is also a great way for the student to start an IRA or a Roth IRA if they don't need that income right away, and they can put it away in a retirement account. And what other deductions do you have available? Can you increase your pre-tax contributions to a 401k or another retirement plan? What you're going to want to do, though, if you are investigating in any of these strategies, is just check with your tax consultant to make sure you do it properly. The next tax credit is the Lifetime Learning Credit, or LLC. This cannot be used the same year as the AOTC. It is an either-or scenario. As the name implies, it can be used for your lifetime, and the maximum deduction is $2,000 per family, not per child. So the credit is available for a family with 1 student or 4 students, but it caps at $2,000 a year. You can use the LLC for undergraduate, graduate, some professional programs, and for trade schools. So it's a much broader category of tax credit. The phase outs are the same as the AOTC, $80,000 to $90,000 for single, and for married filed jointly, $160,000 to $180,000. Again, married filed separately, you are not eligible for this tax credit. This is also a great opportunity to hit the reset button. College is a big milestone for both students and parents. Use this as an opportunity to maximize efficiency in all facets of your financial life. In other words, clean out your financial junk drawer. So some of the bigger items that you might want to look into and make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck is taxes. Are you positive that you're paying the lowest amount? Insurance. Revisit your home, auto, life, health. Do you have the right coverage? Are you getting the best rate? For investments, is your investment mix the right mix for you? What about your fees? So we don't do everything, but we feel it's our responsibility to make sure that all of these things are being taken care of. All those little things add up too. When was the last time you shopped rates for your phone? And if your student was involved in different clubs, sports, dance lessons, etc., if they're not doing them anymore, this is a great opportunity to reallocate those funds, maybe put those towards a monthly college payment plan. And what about other subscriptions? Magazines, other types of media, cable, Netflix, Hulu. Maybe you don't use certain subscriptions anymore. And college calculates that it takes about $250 to feed a student. Well, you can reallocate those funds too. Identify any non-essential spending that you underutilize, services that you don't use anymore, and see what you can put towards college, towards a monthly repayment plan. And I find myself doing this once or twice a year, and I probably save myself $150, $250 a year on a monthly cash flow basis. So it works. When it comes to college borrowing, one size doesn't fit all. The best option is going to be dictated by your family. And there's going to be more to follow on how do you determine which criteria are best. And just keep in mind, we have no affiliation with any lender, institution. This is just general advice on how to consider which options are best for you. We're going to get into the meatier part of borrowing for college. The first place you're going to want to start is federal student loans, and specifically federal direct loans. Every student is entitled to this program. You have two types of direct loans: unsubsidized and subsidized. The subsidized loans do not accrue any interest during college. That only begins after the repayment program starts. But with unsubsidized, interest accrues once the loan is dispersed. The deferment period for these loans is 6 months after graduation. So the student's going to have 6 months to find a job, and then at that point, the repayment program starts. These do not require a cosigner. There's no established credit required. It's in the student's name only. So this is actually a great way for students to begin to establish credit. Right now, for the 2022/2023 year, the fixed interest rate on these loans are 4.99%. Origination fee is 1.057%. Now, there are limits to the amount you can borrow with direct loans. For your freshman year, it's $5,500, $6,500 your sophomore year, and then when you get to your junior and senior year, you can borrow $7,500. So in total, a student can borrow $27,000 over 4 years. And these can be consolidated after graduation. It's a much more complex topic after graduation when you're looking into refinancing or consolidation, but these can be consolidated. And there are no prepayment penalties. How do you get federal direct loans? Student is going to go to studentloans.gov. They're going to sign in using their student FSA ID. They're going to have to complete a loan counseling session. It's 20 to 30 minutes, and then from there they'll complete the loan agreement, and then they're done. How much is too much when we're talking student loans? Ideally, you're not going to borrow more than the average starting salary by your major. In 2020, the estimated starting salaries for the following degrees go like this. Engineering, it's about $74,000. Computer science, about $76,000. And you can see all the way down what the average estimated national salary is for majors in these degrees. What happens if you need more than $27,000? Well, you can go to the Federal Plus or the Parent Plus program. These are also federal loans, and these are generally signed for by parents. Can be graduate or professional students in the student's name, but for undergraduate, it's going to be the parent or the guardian. It is not need-based, so you have a credit check, and there is a maximum amount that you can borrow, and it's going to be the amount that you need to cover that gap. There are some state programs that are available that I would highly recommend you explore. Generally, they are going to be, your student's going to be eligible for these programs from the state they are a resident in, but if they're going to an out-of-state college, they're usually going to be eligible for any in-state programs there that are dispersed through the state. So you want to check that, and I'll have more information on that in a little bit. And then, of course, you have your private loans. Sallie Mae, Citizens, Wells Fargo, there's literally hundreds of options to choose from. A little more on the Plus or Parent Plus loans. Again, they are federal loans. They are only in the parent's name. The student is not attached to the loan in any capacity. The student can pay back the loan if they wish, but they don't have a formal obligation on that note. And approval and denial is going to be granted right away. Currently, for the 2022-2023 school year, the interest rate is 7.54%. Some of the pros for using a plus loan, you have the option to defer payments at no additional cost. You will have accrued interest, however, so these are unsubsidized loans. There are no prepayment penalties. They have flexible repayment plans, income-based, extended, 30-year, etc. You could change the repayment plan at any time, as many times as you wish. You can consolidate multiple years, multiple children. There is a forgiveness program, law enforcement, nurses, education, and then you do have very good consumer protection with federal loans, and they are pretty lenient even though you do have to get a credit check. Some of the cons of a Parent Plus loan: they can only be issued in the parent's name, and that's for the life of the loan. The origination fee is pretty steep. It's about 4.25% right now, and again, it's an unsubsidized loan, so that means that interest is going to be accruing once the loan is dispersed. So if your student is a freshman in college, you get a Parent Plus loan, that loan gets dispersed, interest starts ticking right then. State loan programs are lesser known compared to federal loans and private loans, but they can be a really great source of funds for your student. But they are all over the place. A lot of times the student's going to be eligible through the state of residence and the state in which they attend school, but not always. Not all schools have borrowing programs. New York does not, for example. And the loan is typically in both the parent and the student name for the entire life of the loan. In other words, they are co-borrowers. Again, there are exceptions. The applications are completed electronically through the state's website, so that's simple, it's convenient, and approval is usually really fast, 24 to 48 hours. Some of the pros for state loans are that they have an aggressive repayment plan, so it usually is going to offer lower fixed rates compared to plus or private loans. The student has equal responsibility for the life of the loan, so that it does help their credit, build a credit history, and you can elect to have the student receive the bill directly. There are several different repayment options. Again, depends on the state, and you can elect to defer the repayment, although that is at a higher interest rate. What are the cons of a state loan program? Well, they don't offer the same consumer protection that federal government loans offer. In fact, state loans are technically considered a private loan. So when students are looking to consolidate their loans, they're usually not able to do so, and they have to refinance instead. The option to defer a payment comes with a higher interest rate, in addition to the accrued interest that builds. You have little flexibility in changing your repayment plan once it's selected. And most of the states, as I mentioned before, they don't offer consolidation options, only refinance options because they're not federal in nature. Parents will typically remain on the loan for the life of the loan as a co-borrower, although Massachusetts and the MIFA program tend to be the exception here. There's usually going to be an origination fee, and the credit requirement is a little bit tougher for state loans compared to the direct plus, the Parent Plus loan. Private student loans are generally going to be the loan of your last resort. The student is primarily responsible for this loan. Parents are going to be attached as a co-signer. In fact, anyone with established credit can co-sign with a student. I mentioned earlier that there are literally hundreds of potential lenders: Sallie Mae, Citizens Bank of America, Discover, and on. Applications are completed online, so that's simple. Approval, denial usually granted in 3 to 5 business days. Some of the pros for private student loans: you will usually have an option to defer your payments at no additional cost, although these are unsubsidized loans, so the interest will accrue when the loans are dispersed. They have the least amount of responsibility for parents financially. There is generally going to be a cosigner release program involved with these, but you're going to want to check master promissory notes for any private student loan that you are looking into to make sure that the terms are agreeable to you. Some lenders don't have origination fees, and strong applicants can be awarded with a lower rate. The cons for private student loans, the list is a bit longer here. They don't offer the same consumer protection as plus or state loans. They typically are going to come with a variable interest rate. If you want a fixed interest rate, those are going to be higher. You have to complete the application before you can find out what the rate and the repayment terms are. So you got to give them all that information before you find out what they're going to give you. Interest rates are all over the place. I've seen them recently from 4%. I've seen them up to 15%. So this is where you're going to really have to shop. Usually you're not going to be able to consolidate these types of loans. You can refinance them, but you can't consolidate them. There's little flexibility in the repayment plans. Rates and terms are going to be based entirely on the cosigner's application. There's too many options and lenders to list. There's, as I said before, literally hundreds of them. And the terms are less transparent than state and federal programs as well. So you really have to understand what you're getting into with any of the private lenders. There are a couple of options for people who don't want to go the Parent Plus or private student loan borrowing route. You have home equity line of credit or HELOC. You could do refinances. If this is something that you're looking at, I would suggest don't just look at the interest rate. HELOCs in particular are very tricky. The tax treatment has become more complicated and less attractive. But also the potential changes to consumer protection from creditors. It's really complicated and really beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. But what you don't want to find yourself is in a position where you have a HELOC, and if something happens and you get in trouble with a creditor, you may find that your house is at risk. And that's something that not everyone is thinking of when they're trying to find different ways to finance college. So just be really careful if you're looking at some of these options, and talk to somebody who really has experience in those specific areas. Then there's the 401k route. People ask, well, should we borrow? Should we take distributions? Let's go to the borrowing first. Borrowing is going to give you access to a low fixed rate, and that's great. But the big con is it's going to have a negative impact on your savings, because, if you're taking money from your retirement, and if we're in a bull market, then there's X amount of dollars that you pulled out to borrow, even though you're paying it back, that's not growing. Essentially what you're doing anytime you're working with trying to take money out or borrow against your 401k, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Peter being your retirement to pay for tuition. And you don't want to risk your retirement just to pay your tuition. As far as taking distributions, the distributions for college purposes, we don't recommend them, because if you're taking a distribution, let's say you take $50,000 from your 401k, well, that becomes taxable income. So when the college looks at your income and they're determining how much can you afford, they see that all of a sudden you have $50,000 more. Oh, well, you can pay more. So you kind of create this spiral where you're taking money out of your retirement, creating your taxable income, to grow, and then you have to pay more. Also, you're going to have your taxes and penalties for the early withdrawal, and again, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul here. So what about a Roth IRA? Roth IRAs could be an option for some people. With a Roth IRA, the money that you contribute to a Roth has already been taxed, and so if you withdraw that principal, even before age 59 and a half, it's not taxable because it's already been taxed. It also is not subject to a 10% early withdrawal. The only thing that you're going to have to really keep track of here is you want to make sure what's the principal or contribution amount to your account, and then what is the earning component of your account, because if you tap into the earnings and you pull that out, that's going to be subject to taxation. It's going to be subject to the 10% early withdrawal if it's before age 59 and a half. And also it's going to be added to your taxable income. So the universities may look at that and say, well, they make more money, so they may factor that into, could make a bigger impact on how much they think you're going to be able to afford. So you still have to be careful with that. And with the life insurance option, do you want to cash out? Do you want to borrow against? The withdrawal's less likely to be treated as untaxed. So we do recommend borrowing instead if you're going to go that route. But again, you're going to want to, really talk to your tax consultant to make sure that something like that is going to work. At this point, if you're asking yourself, well, what's the best solution for me? It depends. And it depends on the criteria that you consider the most valuable. Some of the questions that you should be asking yourself to help you understand the best options for you include: how much does the rate on the loan matter? Who do you want on the loan and for how long? Do you want it parents, kids, both? How much do you value consumer protection and flexibility in repayment plans? And is there a premium that you would pay for having more consumer protections and greater flexibility in repayments? And do you have home equity that is accessible? Are you willing to access it to pay for college? And do you understand the implications of doing so? Let's revisit one of the first slides, get back to the timeline. What you're going to do when your student is graduating high school, you're going to review your taxes, insurance policies. You're going to review your small ticket junk drawer items. And if you're doing a monthly college payment plan, that's going to come due right around June 1st. And then right around July 1st, a month later, that bill is going to be issued for the fall semester. You should have your lending strategy in place. And a month after that, the fall semester bill is going to be due. So it's an exciting time, but it's also a time where there's a lot of things happening and they're going to come at you really quickly. So you got to really be on top of this to make sure that you're not caught flat-footed. So I've got a couple of resources here for you. You can check studentloan.gov. There's a repayment calculator. Just be aware that the student loan calculator is most accurate for the period right when the student graduates. There's a lot of basic assumptions that are built into that calculator, so they may not necessarily be the same as the student is going to realize as time goes by. So use it as a general tool. There's also a private loan comparison option you can go to. Elm Select has one. It's really easy to use. You just type in the name of the school and it'll pop up and it'll show you some options. So that's a good way to start your journey down a private loan option. For state resources, the National Association of State Student Grant and Aid Programs, NASCAP, they've got a great resource because checking 50 states can be cumbersome. So you can go right to this page and it will list all the states with a hyperlink. You just click the hyperlink and you'll go to that state's financial aid resources, see what they have available. They might have some lending options, but they also might have some scholarship and grant options. So again, based on states, they're all over the place, but there's a lot of great information that you can find from this page, and it's right from a single source, so it'll save you a lot of time by using it. Here in Arizona, we only have limited amount of state programs available to students, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about a few. The first one is Arizona Teachers Academy, and this is open to students who are enrolled at Arizona public universities and a handful of community colleges. That list can be found by accessing that link. Keep in mind that Grand Canyon University is not part of this program. GCU is a private for-profit school, and the grace period for this program is 12 months rather than your typical 6-month deferment that you'll find with most loan programs, even though this is not technically a loan. To qualify, you have to work in a qualified school, and that means that you work in a public school district or a public charter school. And the service length is 1 year for each year of scholarship that you receive. The great thing about the Teachers Academy is that this covers a wide array of programs. It covers undergraduate, it covers graduate, post-bac, and there's a couple other programs that you can look at on the website. Failure to honor your service. So if you don't work in a public school, if you work outside of Arizona, this will essentially turn the scholarship into a loan, and you're going to be required to repay the scholarship. The next program is AZ Leap. For AZ Leap, you have to show substantial need. The qualifications are the same as a Pell Grant according to FAFSA requirements. The EFC, or expected family contribution, for the 2022 school year is 6206. So if your EFC for universities is below that, then this is something that you can qualify for. The maximum award is $2,500, with the average award being around $1,000. And we have a link where you can check more information on that. The Arizona Native Scholars Grant, or ANS, is through the University of Arizona. They just started this July of 2022, and it's available to students who are members of one of 22 federally recognized tribes in Arizona. It's a needs-based grant, so any tuition or fees that the student has after any other scholarships or grants have been factored in, it's taken care of 100%, so it's a great award. And this is available for undergraduate students and currently only on those on the main Tucson campus, though. There is talk that they may expand this to graduate students and students on satellite campuses, but that's to be determined in the future. And it is open to incoming students, but if you are a current student on the main campus as an undergraduate, this is something that you can still access even if you're a sophomore, junior, senior. It's still available to you. There is no application that you need to fill out, but you do need to be an Arizona resident, and there is a tribal enrollment verification process that you have to go through. There are limits to the grant and requirements that have to be met, so make sure if this is something that you're looking into, that you think you qualify for, make sure you get over to the financial aid page at University of Arizona, and it'll go through some of the other details, but it's a great program if you qualify. Well, you might have some questions now. We went through a ton of information. My contact information is below. You can call me, you can email me. Happy to schedule a time to talk, answer your questions. You want to talk further, happy to do so. If you want to get a head start in understanding what some of these details look like that are more concrete, more tangible, we have something called a college money report. It takes about 5 minutes at most. You can enter in a few schools and it will show you some information and what it might look like for your student. This is one of the pages from the College Money Report. I made up a student. Her name is Paige, and one of the schools that I selected is Northern Arizona University. And you can see some of the details that it goes into. And as I said, it takes less than 5 minutes to fill this out. And this is the type of information that you can see just from one school. It will show information on admissions. What's the average GPA, SAT, ACT, things like that for the school. Where does a school rank? What's their percent admitted, graduation rank, things like that. We'll have some financial aid information, and then of course it will have some financial data for that student based on the information that I put in. Great tool. Like I said, it's a good start to help you understand what a particular school might look for your student. So check it out. Well, thank you. We went over a ton of information, and again, if you have questions, my contact information is there. You can reach out. If you want the College Money Report, we'll get that over to you, and if you want to talk about that, we can do that as well. But hopefully you found that there was a lot of useful information here, and we'll get all those resources out to you. And hopefully this is going to be a much easier process for you and your family as you send your student off to college, and we hope it's a very successful one.